Now, one of our other main developing stories is, of course, the situation in Sudan, the fighting between those two military groups in and around the capital, Khartoum. Well, in the last couple of hours, the general of the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan, that's one of those military groups, has said on social media that he approves a 24-hour ceasefire. This is General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, tweeted this. He'd spoken to the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken there, agreed a pause to ensure the safe passage of civilians and the evacuation of people who are injured. That's what many international groups have been calling for, and lots of international diplomatic efforts have been trying to achieve just that. But the Sudanese army, or the other military group involved in this fighting, did release a statement denying any knowledge of this proposed ceasefire. There has been days of fighting now between these two rival forces. Almost 200 people have been killed, 1,800 or so injured is the last numbers we have. Khartoum has seen airstrikes, shelling, and heavy small arms fire there as well. And this is just some of the latest pictures, these released by the RSF paramilitary forces. This is actually around Khartoum International Airport. You can see the black smoke there rising from a burning plane there. Right, let's take a look now at the area more closely. Sudan is part of Eastern Africa, known as the Horn of Africa there, has a history of instability. And the area's Intergovernmental Authority on Development will be sending presidents of South Sudan, Djibouti and Kenya to the country to try and broker some sort of permanent peace there. Now, as I mentioned, the fighting here is between army units loyal to two different generals who've they both between them been in charge of the country since 2019. 2019 was when the longtime leader Omar al-Bashir was toppled. These are the two men. On the left, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hamiti. He is Sudan's deputy leader. He commands the paramilitary force called the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. That's the group that we've heard from in that tweet saying that they're in favour of a 24-hour armistice. On the right-hand side is the de facto leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Both of them want control of Sudan's military, but they disagree on how to restore civilian rule to Sudan. Let's go live now to Nairobi. Our correspondent Mercy Juma is following events from there. Hi, Mercy, what's the latest?
Hello, thank you. Aptly put it about the information that is going on about a 24-hour truce or armistice that is being looked into. On one hand, we have the leader of the RSF, that is Hemeti, saying they will abide and are ready to go on with the plans to necessitate a 24-hour putting down their arms for people to be able to move around, and most importantly for the wounded or injured to be able to access medical assistance. But there is a lot of conflicting information because, like you say, the armed forces through their Facebook page, the spokesperson say there is no such thing as an agreement to down their tools for 24 hours. Yet in an international media house, General Burhan said that there is something like that and they are willing to do what? To put down their arms for 24 hours. So still a lot of uncertainty. We don't know if this 24-hour truce will actually happen and whether they will be able to access the people who are injured, and the people of Sudan will be able to access humanitarian assistance. Already we have reports of more than 180 people being injured as of Monday evening. The numbers are definitely up because the fighting has been going on. And other than that, we are seeing key humanitarian organizations and agencies folding up and leaving major parts of Sudan where people need assistance. We're talking about organizations like ICRC, WFP, and even Save the Children, whose facilities have been attacked, whose workers have been attacked. So a really, really fluid situation at the moment, which we're still watching.
Mercy, just remind us, why are these two military groups fighting?
So these military groups are fighting because of power. It's basically a struggle for power. Taking us back to 2019, both generals really worked together, fought on the same side to topple the then President Omar al-Bashir. And then the coup happened in 2021, and there has been calls for a transition in Sudan from a military government to a civilian government. And that's where we are right now. But how this transition is going to happen is what is causing all this unrest, because for the two generals, it's really important for each one of them to know where or what position they will hold in this new civilian government that everybody is looking into, that Sudan is going into. So it's basically, you know, the disagreement on who does what or who takes what position when that transition happens from a military rule to a civilian rule. So that's why the two are fighting.
Mercy, thank you very much for that. I know you're keeping across the latest updates there, and we'll speak to you again later on. And now, though, Massa Baba is a journalist and director of the Ayin Network, a non-profit independent media outlet which has been covering Khartoum for the past 12 years. He described the situation on the ground.
Well, since the morning of the 15th, the situation has been very dire, and it's switching to full-on war between them. You know, at first it was just a few clashes at the army headquarters and in southern Khartoum, but soon after that, the airstrikes started and turned into a full conflict. So right now, residents are stuck in their houses for the most part. It depends on where you are. You know, if you're in the Khartoum locality, you're going to be stuck indoors because the constant ammunition being fired and airstrikes. And this morning, we're getting reports of airstrikes, and even in Khartoum North and Bahri and Durman. So the closer you are to the center, the more people are kind of locked in. But the more you go to the outskirts, things are a little bit more quiet. But still, the issue of the logistics and getting supplies and, you know, power being out for days at a time, still from the 15th from morning with no coverage, and covering the conflict now is a completely, like when, you know, there were the protests and the marches and stuff, it was a lot easier to get information from the ground, but people are holed up right now. So we're depending on a lot of eyewitness accounts of, you know, where planes are going, where the airstrikes are happening, where the shelling is happening, where the troops' movements are. So we're trying to just follow that minute by minute.
I see. And what's your thoughts on how we get some kind of resolution to this?
Well, unfortunately, this was kind of an inevitable clash that was going to happen because of the long history of the central government using militias and militarizing communities. So now it's almost like one of the historic moments in Sudan. There's never been a battle like this in Khartoum throughout its history, since the days of the British colonialism, and you know, but since those days, Khartoum hasn't seen this kind of fighting. Okay. Unfortunately, it seems like both are on a one-way path towards dominance, and you know, two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time. So the negotiation policy will need to frame it as, you know, what's going on right now, which are war crimes. You know, when we see the amount of shelling and stuff that's going on. So it's a survival tactic on both sides, on Hemeti's side and on Burhan's side. Political and as far as their forces, and the huge, you know, economic interests that go along with their forces. So they're trying to get the upper hand right now. When you follow their statements and their media and what their discourse looks like, they're trying to form themselves as the ones who are saving the country from these outlaws. You know, both are saying the same thing. And basically they're trying to get in, you know, in good terms with the pro-democracy camp, the bigger pro-democracy camp that includes, you know, the protesters, includes the citizens who are kind of, at this point, there's no confusion as to why we need civilian government and why we need democratic change. Every single citizen in Sudan kind of sees that clearly right now.
Thanks to Mossa Baba for talking to me just a little earlier on. I just want to bring you a couple more lines that we have, the very latest on the situation there. We've got an update from Emmanuel Agunza, our correspondent, talking about the UK and US foreign secretaries meeting. This is on the side. They're at a big conference, G7. They're meeting on the sidelines. They've had discussions, and two things specifically they've expressed their concerns about. First of all, the assault on the European Union ambassador to Sudan, and the attack on a US embassy convoy in the capital, Khartoum there. So both the Secretary of State for the US and the Foreign Secretary for the UK have been in conversations about the situation in Khartoum, expressed concern specifically about those two attacks on the European Union ambassador and on the US convoy, as well as talking, of course, more broadly about the devastation of the fighting itself. They are engaged in efforts to broker some kind of ceasefire, it would seem, because we've heard from one side that they have been in talks with Secretary Blinken about that 24-hour armistice. So high-level international talks underway to try and reach some kind of peaceful resolution to the situation in Sudan. Plenty more new lines and developments coming through minute by minute here, and we will keep you right across those.